Please learn more about Freedomizer Radio by going to freedomizerradio.com and also Facebook us right at freedomizerradio.com. Catch you there.
Thank you for tuning in to Freedomizer Radio, where we have a 24/7 chat room where you can come and share what's going on in the world with people of like mind. Anything and everything against the New World Order. Dial 347-324-3704 to catch our live show. Beginning at 9 in the morning Pacific Standard Time, Monday through Friday till midnight, and 9 to 9 on Saturday and Sunday. Take us to the beach. Take us to the park. Take us on a walk with the dog. Only on Freedomizer Radio.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to GIF. And I am here with my co-host, Scarlett Anonymous. Hello, Scarlett.
Hello, Red.
You made it back from break with us. Awesome. And
I did.
Now we will be bringing on Leah. I apologize. I was calling her Lee. It's Leah. From Oppenheimer Ranch Project. Let's bring her on right now. She's the star of our show. Let's bring her forward.
Hello.
Hello, Leah.
How are you?
Welcome to GIF. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
And is Diamond with you?
He is. I don't know if he picked up the line just yet.
I'm here.
There he is.
Oh, hi, Diamond. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
How is things going for you guys? Let's start there. How's just everyday life, guys?
It's really busy. It's pretty darn busy. We've got bees and pigs and chickens and building projects and you name it, there's no end in sight.
I can totally relate. It is springtime on the homestead for sure.
Yep.
Springtime equals very, very busy time. And since you brought up these bees, let's talk about these bees because I just watched this episode with your bees. What happened?
Well, Diamond was splitting our hives, and he's got one or both hives split, Diamond? I don't know if you did both or just one of them.
I split both of the hives.
Yes, and we've got some new queens, or one new queen, because one queen that we ordered was dead, unfortunately, but that can be rectified. Yeah. And, the cameraman got stung, but no big deal. These are Italian honeybees. They're pretty gentle, so sometimes when they sting, you don't even notice.
Okay, that's good. That's good. The Italians are what I've been looking at.
Yeah. I think when we put our first hives in, we didn't exactly know what we were doing and jostling them a little bit. They got a little ornery, but right. It was like there was a point at which I felt just a little pinch, and I thought, did I just get stung? And I was like, no, it couldn't have been because that was nothing. But that's what it was. It's like almost unnoticeable. Yeah. Yeah. But it does seem to maybe depend on how ornery they're feeling. If they're feeling under threat or it's a certain time of year, they might be more aggressive and the stings might hurt more in those times.
Right. Now, how long have you guys had these hives now?
It's been about a year.
Okay, so you've only been at the bee thing for a year and you're getting this much honey? What's your secret?
Well, the honey was actually pretty limited last year just because we were just getting started, right? So the bees have to make babies and do that whole thing. So, we got a good amount last year. Then we leave them alone for the winter because they need the honey to survive. But, there's millions of bees now probably. And that's fantastic. And, they have honey in there from over the winter, so there will be tons of honey this year in all likelihood.
Oh, that's awesome, because I know he was pulling those out, and they look heavy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they get heavy. The frames get real heavy.
Yeah, they looked heavy. And I was just like,
Yeah.
wow, look at that. And I really thought, wow, they must have had these for a really long time. So that makes me feel really good knowing that my research has been correct and they should be producing really good within the second to third year.
Right. I mean, it also helps that, the winter was kind of on the mild side and,
It was.
So that probably helps.
Yeah, Italian honeybees is the breed you want in this area because we live in the desert. Even in the winter, it gets warm, and bees need to continuously reproduce their population every 6 weeks. So the Italians do that. Other types and species of bee for used for honey, they increase their populations in the fall, and then they try to hang on through the winter in a dormant phase. Whereas the Italian honeybee continues to produce, and if they can fly out of the hive, they'll go look for pollen. So our bees were bringing pollen back a month ago, and they've been stockpiling honey. From pine trees, because we've only just had our first blooms, little purple wildflowers, in the last 2 weeks.
Right. Now, have you tasted the honey diamond?
This year, no, I'm not this year yet, but I'm about to take some of the frames, and we will taste the early season honey, see what's going on there.
Yeah, because I'm curious to know what that pine does for the flavor.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things you can do is, we did this last year. We installed these Ross round frames. So a Ross round frame essentially has like a circular opening in it, and the bees actually make their comb inside the circular opening. And then all you have to do is pop that out of the frame, and you put a plastic cap on the top and the bottom, and you get this cool product it's comb honey in this circular thing, and people like that because it looks interesting and novel and cool. But because you're only doing that for a limited amount of time, you can time it with whatever is flowering at that time, and then get specific kinds of honey, like a clover honey or whatever is blooming at that stage.
Right. Now, can your bees get into your greenhouse?
Yes, if the doors are open.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you guys plant particular things within the greenhouse hoping that the bees are going to pick it up?
Not particularly, no.
Now, here's the thing with honeybees. Most people think they're going to bring them to their farm or garden, and the honeybees are going to go and pollinate other plants. That is a false assumption, and it's not how it works. In fact, when all of our squash were blooming and we wanted the honeybees there moving around the pollen, the honeybees were all gone. They're nowhere to be found. They're somewhere else a half a mile away in a field gathering whatever is blooming naturally. The reason they do this is because they're smarter than us. And they go out and they actually find the native bloom because it's in abundance, and they can literally collect it for days, the same thing over and over again, and it's easy to communicate back to the hive that, look, there's like an acre and a half of this stuff, and let's go out here. They don't want to screw around with 9 squash plants or even 90 because it won't sustain them. They go for what's naturally blooming, and it's amazing. Who was pollinating our garden were the native pollinators. It was funny.
That is good to know because people do not information.
Yeah, so we have lots of native pollinators here, and so it's not a thing. If you have honeybees, you attract native pollinators because they want to steal the honey from your honeybees. So what you do is in essence, in permaculture, bring in this new biome of all this competition of all these other native pollinators trying to steal the honey, and then they just go pollinate your garden. So it's a win-win.
Now here's an interesting question for you, and this is one of my personal ones that I've wrestled with a little bit. Have you found any problems with keeping your chickens away from your bees?
No, and the reason is merely because our chickens are penned. We have so many predator problems here, and we don't want them snacking on everything in our gardens. If our gardens were all fenced, it might be a different story. But even if they were free-ranging fully, I wouldn't be concerned about it.
Okay. Because I free range all of mine. Mine are completely free range. And
right.
this was one of my concerns with getting bees is, am I going to have problems? Am I going to invest in these nukes? And then my chickens are going to eat them all.
Well, they could eat thousands of them, and it really wouldn't matter. They're making thousands. Once the colony is going, you could lose 10% of your bees to your chickens, and it would be cost effective because it'd be free food, and the bees would just replace themselves.
Right.
I also don't know what the likelihood of chickens catching the bees is. I feel like that's pretty small.
Very good. It's actually very good. We have somebody around here that has bees that every once in a while make their way over here to, I don't know if they just, breeze through checking to see what's around, but they'll end up stopping and stopping at the water trough and getting water a lot. And listen, my chickens are on it. They're like little little raptors. Everybody says that they link back to the Tyrannosaurus Rex. I'm like, no, you're wrong. They link back to the raptor. Okay, I watch it. They go in groups. They surround things in circles. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a chicken, like a flock of chickens, trap a mouse, but that is like National Geographic stuff, man.
Didn't they just eat a bird?
Yeah, I was just about to throw in the mouse thing. It's absolutely hilarious to watch them run after and catch and kill mice. It's hysterical. And just today, I went out into one of the yards, and I'm like, what are they picking at? And it's the remains of some small bird, maybe a little robin or something. Almost none of it left. I have no idea how they got it. If they caught it, I don't know. And I was like, well, enjoy, ladies.
Right. And for those out there that aren't chicken people, we should probably explain, a lot of people are very misconstrued on chicken. They're not vegetarians, everybody. They will
they're not.
Eat everything to their neighbor. Okay.
Absolutely. They are most definitely omnivores.
They are definite predators even. And you have to give them credit on that because, like you said, it's funny to watch, but at the same time, you have to respect them because, here's this creature that really has, according to us, no way to really hunt or do anything, and then look at what they accomplish.
Yeah. And they'll resort to cannibalism, so they're in the full spectrum. They don't care if they have to eat their own to stay alive.
Oh, yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely. They will absolutely wipe each other out one at a time if they have to. Survival of the fittest in the coop. That's definitely how it works.
Yeah. And, it's fascinating to watch them learn what is and isn't good to eat. I mean, this is the way I think about it. It's like, chickens peck at everything, and this is a way of determining what's good and what's not, what's toxic and what's not. And then, they watch each other and they imitate each other. So, one chicken gets brave enough to try something, and then, another one tries and another one tries. And as I like to say, the bigger the flock, the smarter they are, because that's how they learn. But that is also the reason why they, not the reason why they tend to be cannibals. I mean, the cannibalism tends to come from stress. But, that action of, picking at everything to see what's good and what's not, well, they might try to peck each other and they go, chicken tastes pretty good. I mean, everybody seems to agree that chicken is delicious.
Everything tastes like chicken.
Well, the sad thing is I have in reference, like stir fry is one of our things that we do here quite often, chicken stir fry, and I've caught myself like, all the leftover, just throw it out to the chickens, and you're like, I just fed my chickens chicken, and they're like, we love it.
Yep.
Because I don't think about it because they don't care. They'll eat it. They don't mind.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's a disservice that we do with people because, like I said, a lot of people don't realize how carnivorous chickens really are.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people sometimes worry about cannibalism in regard to eggs, and we have this problem occasionally. And again, it doesn't come up that often, but once in a blue moon. We've had a couple of egg eaters here and there.
Yeah, this is not something I've had to deal with yet. I'm curious.
Well, so the trick is, usually what happens is, an egg gets broken in the nest by accident. Somebody steps on it funny or whatever. And then, everybody goes and picks at it and tries it like they do with everything else, and they discover that eggs are delicious. Sometimes this becomes a habit, and usually when it becomes a habit, it's due to stress. But then the problem is, if you've got one egg eater, then more will follow. So you've got to get rid of the egg eater as soon as you can. The hard part is figuring out who is eating the eggs. Because if you don't catch them in the act, you won't know, and you won't necessarily. You might find another chicken, pecking at a broken egg in the nest, and I still find that now, even though we don't currently have any egg eaters. And I just remove broken eggs as soon as possible to reduce that possibility. But it's funny because I was trying to scope out one particular egg eater at one time, and finally I realized that the way to find the egg eater was to find somebody with egg on their face, which is a cliche, but it has real meaning. You find the chicken with egg on their face, and you probably found the egg eater.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, like I said, this isn't a problem I've had to deal with. I had a soft shell egg once, and it was one time, and I gave out some oyster shell, and I haven't had that problem since. And then I did have a broken egg in the nest just last week, but it was all there. They didn't even peck at it. They didn't even seem interested in it, I guess. But all the other eggs were covered in yolk. It was gross.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little hard to clean up and
Yeah.
And the soft shell egg isn't even necessarily a problem. Soft shell eggs occur often with like new layers, but even sometimes older layers at the beginning of a clutch, and it's just a reproductive glitch. And I've come across those as well, and it's usually like a kind of one and done kind of thing. I do give my birds oyster shell. I just leave it out for them to, pick at as they want to and let them self-regulate.
We had a bird last night drop a soft shell egg sleeping. When I went to put him to bed at like 10, there was a soft shell egg right underneath a bird. Just fell out. It must have fallen out. So it does happen pretty regularly.
Yeah, so it's somebody that's just coming into their reproductive cycle, and it's just a glitch.
Well,
same thing with like wind eggs. Little wind eggs, that don't have wind eggs, or I can't think of the other name for them, but a wind egg is just a little tiny egg without a yolk. It's another reproductive glitch, and usually, yeah, and it just, it happens, and then it's over. If you have a bird that has the same problem over and over again, well, then there's probably a health problem, but, usually it's just a glitch.
My gold Wyandotte laid one of those wind eggs. That was her first egg that she ever laid.
Yep. Yep.
It
Marble.
looked almost like a brown little ping pong ball.
Yeah.
And it felt like a ping pong ball, It's about the best analogy I can come up with. And, my girls are just a little over a year old now. So they're still pretty young layers. And then I've got my rooster. Now, he's a little older than the girls because I got him already, everybody wants to get rid of roosters. Nobody wants to get rid of the hens. Everybody wants to get rid of the roosters.
Yeah.
You can always find roosters looking for a good home.
Funny enough, we're in this weird moment where we are at a dearth of roosters, which I never thought we'd see the day. But we have kind of whittled ourselves. We have probably 50 to 55 chickens. I don't have a count at this point, because you get to that point in the chicken math and you really can't keep count. But
no,
so
I'm with you. And now my standard answer when somebody's like, how many chickens do you have? I'm like, you know what, numbers just, I have chickens.
It's called chicken math.
Yeah,
it's real.
It is real.
Yeah. Well, we had sort of whittled ourselves down to 4 roosters, and recently we had a raccoon attack, and the sad part about that was that one of the roosters we lost was a rooster named Charlie. He was a barred Plymouth Rock, and he was a champ. I mean, a total gentleman. I can't tell you how many times I saw him just calmly step in between two roosters that were squabbling and just put an end to the fight, or stand in between me and another rooster that was maybe being aggressive with me. Just a gentleman. Amazing. And he was, we got him at the farmer's market for $5. His name was Frying Pan, because, again, who wants roosters?
Right.
And so the other rooster that was killed in this attack, we suspect strongly that, true to form, that Charlie probably stepped into the middle of what was going on between the raccoon and the other rooster, and he got his neck broken. He was still alive, but obviously that's no way to live, so that was the end of that. So that was pretty sad. And now we're down to 2.
and I'm also going to add, for those that don't know about, chicken life, I have a barred rock hen, and she's gorgeous, so I can just imagine what he had to have been. A very handsome boy. He was
indeed. Definitely.
I mean, very striking. And I'm a sucker for the black and white, so, I mean, to me, he would have been like, oh.
Yeah. Well, and the other rooster we lost in there was a Brahma. I don't know if you know what those look like, but very striking looking. Real heavy-bodied, feathered legs. His name was Mozart because he really resembled Mozart. He wasn't particularly friendly. He wasn't aggressive either, kind of shy and a little paranoid about people. And sadly, he lost his head in that attack. So,
aww.
Yeah, poor guy.
And that's part of what we were talking about before you guys called in. A lot of people don't like to talk about
the dirty side,
the uglier things of homesteading and off-gridding and self-sustaining. But these are important that we do talk about them because it helps other people understand, hey, you know what, it's not just you.
Well, and how to cope during these situations. We had talked about when Red had lost her goat here a couple weeks ago, for people who might have been, brand new goat people, that could have turned them off from the experience. That could have stopped them from living that dream of self-sustainability. So these are the downfalls and the pitfalls and the gritty side that you need to hear, whether you like to hear it or not. It's important to know because you will have to mitigate some of these things at a certain point.
Agreed. Yeah, it's really important. I mean, there's definitely a grisly aspect, and it's something you have to be prepared for. And obviously, if you're going to be raising your own meat, that's a really good reason to be prepared for the ugly side of things. Because, butchering is hard for some people. I've had a lot of people, say that, we make mistakes by naming our animals the way we do. And I appreciate that perspective. I know a lot of people like to stick to names like Frying Pan and, Saturday Night Dinner or whatever it is. Just give it the animal a food name. I just happen to feel differently. Like I feel like if I connect with my animals and I get to know them, then for me personally, at the end of the day, when slaughter time comes around, I feel like I can better say thank you and honor that animal and, thank you for your companionship as well. And for me personally, it's not a big deal to sit down and, let's say, enjoy Mozart, which we did not, but at the dinner table, it's not hard for me to say thank you, Mozart, at the dinner table. That's not true for everybody and probably not true for most people.
Petey and Polka are delicious.
That's true. But Petey and Polka were our Red Duroc hogs from last year, from whom we got about 600 pounds of meat. And we're we're still selling that meat, and we're still eating it. And they are delicious.
I can imagine. And I'm with you. I am with you on this. The people have been getting on me too because I haven't went out into the pigs and stuff. I started with goats because I wanted the dairy and the meat. And I was really particular on what I did. And when she's talking about losing the goats, I don't think you guys are familiar. I went out and I purchased a 5-year-old milking doe from a dairy out here. And I spent $250 on this La Mancha alpine mix. And she was milking, she was giving a gallon a day. And I was, totally stoked, bought this goat, brought it home, and she died in 4 days.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That stinks.
I ended up getting a hold of the vet. There was a whole lot of stuff. And we can't say 100%, but we were treating her for what the vet immediately jumped to, which was calcium deficiency. And she sprang back, and we thought we were going to save her, and then she just went down again really hard. And again, we treated her for the calcium deficiency, and again, she sprang right back, and then the next morning again was down. And it just, she literally went down within 2 days of even bringing her home. And, the vet said, this is not something that happened with you. This is a severe calcium deficiency from, wherever she came from. It could have been other things intertwined with that, but it definitely had a lot to do with calcium deficiency. And this has been a big thing that I tell everybody now, because nobody ever told me, and I didn't know until this happened, of course. A milking doe needs 12 grams of calcium a day.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. And people believe
and that information was truly, truly hard to find. It was like you had to be on Animalopedia in the deep dark, actual papers, not anything that was published, to the public, which I feel is a disservice that you have to look that deep underneath the layers to find something like that information.
Yes.
I believe it was the University of Tennessee who ended up having the information on that.
Right, and then I called the vet and confirmed with her. But your normal standard doe who's not in milk only needs between 3 to 5 grams of calcium a day. So your normal feed that you're giving and your hopefully alfalfa grass mix that you're giving to your dairy goat, only dairy goats though, you don't really want to give alfalfa to non-dairy goats because it runs too hot for them. Now, your dairy goats, between those two things, they're going to get what they need calcium-wise. The mistake that's being made with breeders currently right now, which, I'm an example of because I don't think the breeder did this to her on purpose. I just think that the breeder was unaware of the fact that she no longer just needs, 5 grams of calcium. She needs 12 grams of calcium, and for 5 years, you haven't supplied 12 grams every day to this milking doe.
Yeah, she's going to be at severe deficiency.
Right, which unfortunately does a severe deficiency. And then with moving her to a new farm at 5, introducing her to a new herd at 5, there was a lot of stresses, a lot of hormones going. She was introduced to a new buck and the whole nine, so that it just everything mixed together is also depleting her of these things, which is going to make that calcium deficiency just boom hit. And unfortunately, with calcium deficiency, from everything that the vet told me, the research I've done now, which most people will never do until they've had to go through it and experience it, and it's absolutely heart-wrenching to watch an animal go through this calcium deficiency. It's awful. My only thing is that I thank God that it wasn't one of mine that I'm truly attached to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a brand new one to the herd, and it didn't have much time for attachment. Absolutely, because like I said, that could have turned you off from the experience. And these are the things that we have to be ready for if we're going to get into this self-sustaining lifestyle that I think you should be prepared for. Because what if this would have happened to one of your new animals. You have to be ready. If you're preparing yourself all year to butcher out that one animal and then one dies, well, what are you going to do now? I think these are the things that are important to be on top of living the homestead life, because if you don't, if you're new to this could really set you back mental health-wise if you're not strong mentally. And it's no one's fault. This is a hard life.
Indeed. Yeah, we are currently dealing with a sick guinea hog, and it's real frustrating because, there's a limit to what can be done. This is a hog that is not eating, and hasn't eaten in basically a week, and things are not looking good. And, so we may have to face a tough choice perhaps in the next few days, because we don't really want to see him starve to death. That's not a good way to go down.
No.
But you can't force a pig to eat. It's not going to happen. You can't really force any animal to eat.
No, you can try to coax them and try to give them treats or, something special out of the ordinary. But above and beyond that, that is, I think, one of the more crucial parts, too, is, for Red, there's no vet to call. There's, especially you guys out there in the desert and in these higher rural areas. There's no one to call, so it is you mitigating all of the issues that occur.
And I'm sure, Leah, that you had to experience it at least once out here the time that you've been here. Now, my first time that I had to, of course, was the goat that I bought Frida. But, what do you do when you're used to, because I did come from Pennsylvania, and it's not city. They still consider it rural, but compared to here, that's city. And, you're still used to being able to pick up the phone, call the vet, take your animal to a vet. What do you do when you finally do get a hold of a vet and their answer is, it's going to take me 2.5 days to get to you?
Or sometimes, like, for example, lots of vets don't deal with chickens and they don't deal with pigs.
Mm-hmm.
Not all, but that's very common. So it's like, okay, my solution is to pick up as many books as I possibly can, and hopefully I find the time to read them all, and hope that I have enough background information or that I have enough that I can look up. And it depends on the species, too. Like, I'm very happy with my resources for raising chickens, my book resources. Some of
we
the
agree
others,
with the book thing, too. We actually said that at the top of the show because we've been running into a lot of issues with the Internet researching for animals that I think everybody needs to go to places to find, actual in-print books to use.
I heard that, and you guys were talking about goats, I think, at that time.
Yeah.
And I have not fully read it, but so far I've had really good luck with the stories guides. The Stories Guide to Raising Chickens, which was written by Gail Demereau, is amazing. It's excellent, and I consider it my chicken Bible. And I feel like every time I do not follow her advice, I should have, is usually what I find out. There is a Stories Guide to Raising Dairy Goats, of which I've only read half of, and I haven't really absorbed all the information, and I don't have any experience raising goats, so I can't really evaluate it. But it might be a good resource for you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I will definitely look into that, and I'm going to sound awful right now. All I can tell you about my chicken book, because that's all I call it, I can't even tell you the title, it's just been the chicken book. My neighbor found out that I bought a bunch of chicks, and she gave me a book, and it's from, 1947. And I thought when she gave it to me, oh, yeah, right. But then I had a couple of things that happened, and when I looked them up in the book, what they said in the book, which I didn't follow, and I went with what I found online, like you said, I figured out, oh, no, should have listened to the book from, way back in, the days of nowhere, because that was obviously way smarter.
It just seems in the realm of animal husbandry, because of, like I said earlier, a lot of it is word of mouth and practice. It seems that the people who took time to write books have appropriate information that comes from a place of knowledge, more so than the way people compile books now and can really just, release them under any publisher as the guide to chickens, And, I mean, is it really researched, or is it just a bunch of references pulled offline and put together in a book?
Right, and I agree. I mean, I feel like any book that addresses anything about homesteading, I mean, all of that is age-old wisdom that people have figured out along the way. And if you find one that was published in 1947 or whatever, it's probably going to be pretty good.
Yeah, because like I said, that's all I can really tell you about my chicken book. If I was at home, I could tell you everything about it, but I'm not right now. And I will remember and I will message you the title of that book so you can look for it, because I don't even know if you can buy it anywhere, because like I said, the neighbor just, was like, oh, you have chickens here. This has been my book for years and years. I mean, she is like a 50-year-old woman that she got it from, wherever, who knows. But she doesn't have chickens anymore. So when she found out I had them, she was just like, oh, here, have this book. And I, like I said, I discredited it because of how old it was. And now I'm learning, like, nope, that's the way to go, And then I think back, now that I'm living this lifestyle as long as I am, they couldn't have been that wrong, guys. They could not have been that wrong back then. They were living freaking great.
Yeah.
We've messed it up. All this technology, all this BS, we messed it up.
Indeed.
There's just no other way around it. And we're so ingrained in that system that we can't seem to break out of it. I even find myself here on the homestead, I have my moments where I'm like, you know what, I'm ready to just throw my hands up and go rent a tiny home or go get a place in town, just go be civilized. I don't even care if it's for 2 days.
Yeah, it can be sort of a hard transition.
Right, and then I stop and I'm like, you got to look around and you got to be like, but I'm in so deep, like this is what I want. It's just not going exactly how I thought it was gonna, and I don't know exactly how I thought it was supposed to be, but this wasn't how I thought it was supposed to be. Because again, you run into that. Everybody wants to tell you the rainbows and sunshines of homesteading and off-gridding, but nobody's like, hey, you know what? It really sucks not to have running water, guys.
I hear that.
It's a true story. It's a true story.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I mean, and I think people get themselves caught up too with, like, let's say, I don't know, internet resources, or I mean, this is a thing that comes up fairly often for me. I mean, I grew up in the New York metro area, and then I lived in Philadelphia for 20 years after that before we came here, right? So totally, pretty much completely suburban and urban.
Right.
And so, I'll meet people here, and let's say they come to the farm, and, I start talking chickens, and somebody says, oh, how do you know so much about chickens? You must have grown up in the country, and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, no, actually, I picked up a book, and then I started raising them. It's like I don't, somehow we've completely lost the idea that we can seek knowledge somehow as a culture, which I find kind of mystifying. I don't really get it.
And what's funny to me is it's like you say, it's like they're, and I don't know if you run into it too, but the minute you're like, no, man, I picked up a book, they're like, this look goes across their face like you just spoke some foreign language that they have no idea what you're saying, and they're like, wow, let my computer brain, nope, it's just not in here. I'm searching, nope, still coming up blank. And it's like a monkey doing a math problem for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if it's a little bit of, we live in this system where, everything that we need supposedly is provided for us. Most people are completely dependent on this system.
And the illusion that it's provided in the city, too. So, I mean, I think people are stuck on that, too, that they must have some connection or attachment to the city because that's where you can get jobs. That's where they'll provide. to think that you could raise your own animals is a foreign concept to most people. It's been removed from their idea of the American dream even.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. It has been totally removed because I'll give you a really funny chicken example. We had people from Pennsylvania, that actual family, that came out to visit, and we went out and we collected eggs. And I kid you not, she looked at me because, you know, I collected eggs. I went inside and I started cracking eggs open to make breakfast. I kid you not. She looks at me and says, that just came out of your chicken's butt. Are we really going to eat that? And I'm
as
like,
if the ones in the grocery store come from some other orifice that's more palatable.
Right, yes, and I said this to her. I said, honey, you know that the eggs at the store still come from chickens, right? She goes, yeah, but not like that. Well, how else do you think they do it? Do you think they're like robots? Do you think we like go in and cut their stomach open and remove them? Do they puke them out? What happened? She goes, well, I don't know, but I didn't think it came out of their butt.
Yeah. I heard a really strange one just last week that I had never heard before. I mean, I run into certain things all the time. Like most people don't know that the eggs that you buy in the grocery store are months old. They have a long shelf life. Yes.
Yes.
Which is why the yolks are flat in the pan and all of that.
Well,
and they do keep
tell
a long
you,
time.
too, that you can even put oil on your eggs at the store, and they last 3 to 6 months, you know. So, I mean, when you think about how long they've been sitting there, the fact that you can even preserve them longer, but yet no one thinks about freshness and are so scared about salmonella and diseases, I think you'd be more concerned about the actual production than the egg itself.
Yeah. Well, and and there's also this misconception that that what you buy in the store is fresh because it's on the grocery store shelf, but that's simply not true. I mean, that's one myth I encounter all the time. But this was a real funny one. So I sold a dozen eggs to somebody for the first time, and he was kind of excited, and he opened the box and he looked at the eggs, and we've got all different color eggshells, and he said, "Oh, you have some birds that lay white eggs." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, I thought that all white eggs were bleached." And I thought, "Whoa, that's a new one. I wonder where that came from." Like all of the eggs that are laid in chickendom, they're bleached at, whatever, Eggland's Best factory, and they come out white. Strange little myth.
Well, I think that comes from a common misconception,
I do. I've heard that.
A lot of people think that, eggs that are like home eggs only come in brown, too, which they don't realize that there's a variety of colors under the sun of eggshells and egg colors, bluer eggs, greener eggs, peachy eggs, and eggs, and so I think that once people only think that, because they've only seen either brown eggs or white eggs, that they must do some type of treatment to them to make them that way.
You want to see people lose their mind? Get Easter eggs.
True.
Okay, the first time you sell somebody a carton of eggs and they open them up and go, why are these blue and green and purple and pink? And you're like, oh, no, that's pretty normal. Or they're like, I didn't ask for dyed eggs. Oh, they're not dyed.
Yeah, I feel like, all of this comes from, ultimately, the freshness factor and, what eggs are supposed to look like. All white eggs in the grocery store, I don't even remember where it came from, but it's some era in the 20th century where that was decided to be the desirable thing, and thus all of the laying birds of the commercial world are all leghorns that lay white eggs. I mean, all of these different things, it all comes from companies. that want you to believe that they provide the freshest thing and the way it's supposed to be, and this is always how it's supposed to be, and blah, blah, blah. But that's just not how the world is.
And you're right. And I wanted chickens. I wanted chickens for like 20 years. So that was like the very first thing I did. I mean, we bought our property, and we were not at all prepared for anything. And I was like, woohoo, chickens! And I bought a bunch of chicks. I did not even care. That was my thing. And I don't regret it. They're awesome and amazing. But I did a lot of looking into my breeds and what I really wanted. And I didn't want the white bird.
And chicken math did, so then your plans weren't necessarily your plans you had in the beginning, so then things got rearranged.
Yeah. But the one thing I knew was I didn't want white chickens. Everybody has white chickens. I didn't want white chickens. I wanted pretty birds. I want to look outside and look at birds and be like, wow, that's a pretty bird. So I went with all these weird kind of varieties because I have silver Wyandottes, gold Wyandottes. And, I also went with these because they're cold hardy. They have small, tight combs to the head, which is nice when you live somewhere like we do, because the bigger the comb, the more frostbite that you risk.
Indeed. Yeah, we did something pretty... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then I have the tetras, which I don't really know what those are. Some people call them tetras, some people call them other things, but they're these red birds. And, again, they've got real small combs. And then I ended up with these two freaking leghorns, the white chickens I didn't want. And it was part of the rooster deal. So in order to get the rooster that I needed for my hens, I had to take these two hens I didn't want. And I agreed. I was like, whatever. And they were very unfriendly, because I bought chicks that I hand-raised, and mine are very friendly birds. They come up, they'll eat from your hand, and they free-range the yard. You pull up in the car, and they greet you at the door. They're like, hey, did you bring anything for us? And, they're very friendly. So these two were very unfriendly. And their names actually are Quartz and Geode. And so I said about, and we call Geode Gigi. And I said about Gigi specifically because she has this really big comb that, flops over to the side and everything. And Quartz's at least stands straight up. Hers isn't so big that it flops over. And Gigi is she was just the most unfriendly bird that I had ever come across. You couldn't even get within a mile of this bird. She'd just run from you and squawk and squeak and just make this huge ordeal. And I looked at my husband and I said, you know what? I said, that bird's not going to make it through the winter because she's going to need to come in the house because it's going to be cold as hell and she's going to get frostbite. She's going to die. Within 2 days, this bird was inside of my house, sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at me in the face when I woke up. Had laid an egg in the bed with me, and then has proceeded ever since to be my favorite bird.
You never wanted
I heard her
Gigi.
say,
this is true. You did not want to like Gigi at all. You didn't.
No,
but it happened.
I didn't. Everything about Gigi I was against. She was a white leghorn. I didn't like the white bird. And she had the big floppy thing. I didn't want that. And it was she was like, no, this woman just said I was going to die. I need to be her best friend. And, well, she's still here. She made it through winter. So, obviously, she's been a great bird.
Yeah, leghorns are known for being pretty flighty and, tending to want to run away from people. And like you said, they're not a great choice for cold climates. I mean, we pretty much followed a similar path. We got our first group of chickens pretty early on. And, we weren't quite ready for for much, but that worked out quite well. And, after that, we picked a lot of winter hardy breeds. We have a lot of Wyandottes as well. And Australorps and Jersey Giants. What am I missing? I don't even remember because there's so many freaking birds now. And then very quickly, people started giving us birds. There'd be somebody that decided that they didn't want to raise chickens anymore, and they're like, "Do you want our birds?" And we go, "Okay, sure, we'll take them." Twist my arm.
Yeah. I told myself because the first round of birds that we got, we weren't prepared for, like, most of us do, because we're just in a hurry to get those birds, because that's that first part of the dream, man, and you can't wait. And so I got, like, I guess it was like a big cat carrier type of a deal, and I kept them in the house, kept them warm, did everything I was supposed to do until, they were big enough to go outside. And then I said, I'm only going to have to do that once. And here I am this year, and I've bought, we're not going to talk about how many chicks I bought this year, but I bought a lot.
No, we're not.
But I now have
chicken math. See, it's chicken math, so it's all
right.
That's
what I was about to say.
It's okay.
Yeah, I now have Arcunas and Americanas and Buff Orpingtons and Black Stars and whatever Domino is. I have no idea what this bird is. I walked into the store. I asked the store, what kind of birds are you selling? They're like, we have no idea. We don't know what they are. But she's white and black. And she was, like, the only one there she had a partner, and I brought both of them home, but the partner died, like, the first night. She made it.
No, partner died, like, day two. Drama died, like, day 2.
Yeah, Drama died, like, day 2. I did call her Drama, though, because she was drama-rific.
Well, it's so dramatic. And that's why it died in a dramatic way, too, because, it was just death.
Yeah. Because somehow she got squished underneath the feeder.
Oh. By the way, I have a barred Plymouth Rock hen named Domino.
Do you?
Yeah.
I named Domino because she actually has like an X of dots on her head. And I'm still waiting for that to feather out all the way to see if it stays that way. On a white head, she's got these black dots that go across and make a perfect X on her head. It's crazy. And that's why I named her Domino. Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's why I named her Domino. And they have no idea what she is, and I haven't been able to find anything that resembles her in anything I've been looking at, especially my chicken book, which was the first thing I went and looked up, and she just doesn't fit any of the descriptions. Of course, there's no color pictures in this book, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But the black and whites, even the descriptions, they did have very good written descriptions, and she just doesn't even fit anything. So I don't know what she is. But now I've got them in the house again, and I just downed myself by 7. 7 more just went out to the chicken coop. This will be their first night out. We'll see how that works. And then right now I've got 14 chicks in the house. And I said again this year, I'm not going to need to do this again because my chickens are going to be hatching their own chickens. And then I said to myself, nope, you know what? Forget this. I'm buying the crap that I need, the little stupid, I've been putting it off buying the galvanized, like, feeder type thing that, like, the store actually uses for them. And I've been putting that off, and I'm like, nope, you know what? I'm just going to buy it because no matter how much I tell myself I'm not going to buy chicks anymore, I have already learned this is a lie.
You buy chicks every time you're in Murdoch, so, yeah, that's why.
Yeah, I've really had to hold myself back.
It's hard. You see them, they're cute. They're looking at you. They're like, buy me, buy me.
I know. And the last time I thought I was going to get out unscathed because they didn't have chickens. So I was like, yes, I'm not going to get shit because I don't want ducks because we're in this, desert. And I just, personally, for me, on a spiritual level with animals, I don't think it's fair to keep ducks where there's no water. And everybody's like, we get these little baby ponds, we fill them up for them. I don't care. That's unnatural for them. It's not fair. I don't want to do that to an animal. Personally, that's a personal thing for me.
Right.
So when but I still go by and look at them because they're cute as all get out. And I go around and I'm looking and they had turkey. And I was like, oh, no. And I walked away, and they didn't even look at them. And then I got, partially through the store, and I ended up back over there again, and I was like, turkeys. turkeys. And then I'm like, oh, they just have these stupid white turkeys. I don't like white birds. I'm not getting white turkeys. And then I look over, and there's these blue things. And I'm like, what are these blue things? They're blue. I mean blue. And it says blue slate turkey with this beautiful picture. And I'm like, oh, shit. I come home.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Right?
I come home. My husband
Hand
looks
over
at me, and he's like, yeah. My husband looks at me, and he's like, what are you doing? What did you get? And I'm like, we have Thanksgiving and Christmas. And my husband's like, okay, so you got turkeys. Yes, because we had talked about getting them. We had agreed that we were going to do that this year, but, you know, he thought we were still like a month or so away from that. And then I looked them up, you know, because I want to know what I got. I want to know how old they are to maturity, if I can really butcher them out for Thanksgiving and Christmas or not. I'm looking everything up. Well, lo and behold, I have these, like, rare, endangered turkeys. That the better
Very
investment
cool.
would be breeding. Yeah, which apparently...
Yeah, we did a lot of research on heritage turkeys and found out a lot of very interesting information between them and straight runs, and we brought that information last week because we thought it was really important for people to understand this difference in turkey because we didn't understand. And to know that there are farms and people trying to bring back, and there's this whole heritage turkey movement to try to bring back these birds that were once on the dinner table with our ancestors, and they were a much more flavorful bird, much more juicy bird, and were better able to, you know, handle our climate. It just makes perfect sense.
Agreed. I mean, you know, for every species, I feel like heritage breeds are often the way to go. You know, like as an example, Wyandotte chickens are renowned for their flavor. We're now raising our first pair of Muscovy ducks, which a lot of people prefer over all other duck meat because it tends to be a lot less fatty and greasy. And they're also bigger, you know. And then there's heritage turkeys and like these guinea hogs we're raising right now. They're supposed to be delicious eating as well, and they're easier to handle than a lot of other hogs. You know, like our Durocs, you know, they get really big. You know, if you let a boar go, they'll be 1,000 pounds. And, you know, they can be a little ornery and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And these guinea hogs are just like, they max out at about 250. They're real gentle, and they don't root around a lot. You know, they're supposed to be delicious eating. You know, there's so many benefits for heritage breeds because then you can really decide what fits your climate and your goals.
Well, and if it was supposed to be there to begin with, I think that, you know, what Red and I were talking about, too, is a lot of these breeding schemes we think have affected, you know, animal husbandry in a negative way. And by bringing back some of these heritage breeds, you could try to hold on to some of these genetic traits that are important that make them different from a commercialized animal.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if you, I don't know if you guys know. I'm sure you guys probably do, but just in case that nobody knows or anybody didn't catch the episode that I did last week and explain the heritage turkey, but one of the main things about the heritage turkey that I think is so important, if it's not a heritage breed turkey, it does not breed naturally.
Yeah. They're inseminated. If they're not a heritage breed turkey, they are being inseminated, and that's a huge thing that we did not realize.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of commercial turkeys, as well as certain kinds of commercial chickens, I mean, they're bred to have breasts that are so large that the animals either can't walk or they die of heart failure, or like in the case of certain kinds of meat bird chickens, they sometimes get this green muscle wasting disease. We raised some Cornish rock hens as meat birds this year, and several of them had this green muscle wasting disease, and it's a product of oxygen deprivation. Those big breasts and being unable to walk makes it impossible to breed.
True.
Yeah.
Well, and they've bred these traits out of them that was kind of scary for Red and I to realize that, the turkey that you go and buy at your local breeder, or if you order, turkeys to hatch yourself, if they're not a heritage turkey, you're going to have to inseminate it. And that's a scary thing when you really think about everybody who even thinks they're going to have backyard turkeys. No, you're not, because unless you are inseminating them and doing the husbandry yourself, you're not going to have new birds.
Yeah, I like to call them Frankenbirds.
Frankenbirds.
That's what they are, and it's scary to know that every turkey you buy, even just from your local farm and garden, is that way unless it's a heritage. So, people, also a trap that they get people into is broad-breasted instead of heritage. They'll try to say broad-breasted heritage. Usually those are tricks for people to try to raise these in-between bred turkeys that are somewhere in between a heritage and these straight-run turkeys. I think that these type of things, also deter people when they go out and buy, livestock too, because you don't know necessarily what to buy. And a lot of times too, when you're going to these places, people aren't knowledged. Like a lot of times, like Red said, when she goes in there, no one knows what kind of birds they are. They don't know anything. So I think that, people have some misconceptions that it's all just going to be out there and in the known, but a lot of it comes from just intuition, which I think goes into, more of the spirituality aspect of it. You can't just do this not trusting some of your intuition, but also using research, knowledge, and information. Otherwise you're really destined for failure. It's a very delicate balance.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I know that, okay, so the book that I mentioned earlier, The Story's Guide to Raising Chickens, the way that I came across that book was, well, first of all, simply that it was in my local Tractor Supply here, but all I did was just browse through it briefly, and I could see right off the bat that this was, the author, Gail Demerome, was somebody that works from a perspective of preventative health. And stress management, and, clearly leans toward more natural care as opposed to, let's say, a medicated chicken that's treated for coccidosis and everything else. She gives a pretty fairly balanced treatment of, let's say, medicating versus non-medicating, because really her goal is to educate. But, just based on the browsing, I could see this approach to preventative health, and that it was really full of information. And I said, oh, this is the book for me. And I came home and I read it, and I was like, that's amazing. And a lot of that ultimately, because I had not raised chickens at that point, but my assessment of her knowledge was based totally on intuition. And then, strangely enough, later on, I was looking for a more in-depth book on chicken health care, and I came across the Chicken Health Handbook, and I did the same thing. I browsed through it, and it appealed to me again, and I didn't even realize it when I bought it, but it turns out it's the same author. So clearly this author appeals to me, but, that intuitive element in terms of where you get your information and what sounds right to your mind, I feel like is really important in terms of where you get your knowledge from.
Well, because I think you can get into the trap of believing that certain people or entities are the end-all, be-all for knowledge, which I think is the wrong way to go about things. I think too many people aren't willing to trust their own intuition and want to hear it from a higher source. And honestly, one thing that I've noticed about, more natural living, homesteading, you just really can't go by, yes, what someone else says is important and their feedback is important, but I think your actual experience outweighs anything else.
Yeah, if you can trust your intuition about what you're observing of your animals, that goes a really long way. I feel like the more time I spend with my animals, even if I'm not actively looking at them, just because I'm spending time with them, I will sort of subtly in the back of my brain pick up a cue that maybe something is wrong with this particular animal, because something's slightly different with how they're behaving or how they look or even how they're walking. So it's like you spend enough time there and you start to pick up on those subtle clues. And that maybe they are not getting something they need or whatever it is.
Right, and when I went back, when I looked back on the entire Frida situation, like I said, it was absolutely heart-wrenching to watch an animal go through this calcium deficiency. And when it hits them like really hard, and it paralyzes their rear. Their legs just kind of buckle. And then
kind of like stiff lamb, and it's bad.
Yeah. And it is. And she wasn't crying. She wasn't in pain. So that made it a lot easier. And, we did stuff, and we did stuff above and beyond even what the vet would have done for her. We took a hammock, and we slung her with a hammock and the engine hoist, because we do actually have an engine hoist on the farm. To make her stand upright, because for people that don't know, if a goat's laying on their side, their stomachs cannot work.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to get them in an upright position, or they're going to, they're going to founder. And so you got to get them up. So we did. We flung her up. We had her up. We were releasing pressure until her legs would be down enough that she was supporting herself. We had her walking as much as we could. We were doing everything that we possibly could for this goat. And granted, we were doing it because at the time she was a $250 investment. It wasn't our emotions and heart yet really in her. And we were like, okay, well, when we thought we had saved her the last time, and we went out in the morning, and we were just so crushed because she was just down on her side, and now she wasn't just down on her side, now she was crying. And 7:45 in the morning, I'm on the phone with the vet like, hey, listen, you said you were coming this morning. I still need you. I need you now. When are you coming? And she's like, I'll be there as soon as I can. I'll be there as soon as I can. This went on. I finally ended up calling her at 8:30 in the morning, and I'm like, listen, you're still not here. I have to make this call. I can't watch this animal suffer anymore. Now she is screaming in pain. Any movement she does or we do with her legs, because we had been doing, like, the physical therapy with her, moving the legs, doing everything so that she didn't get those real tight muscles. And she was just screaming in pain no matter what you did. And I was like, I've got to make this call now. And she's like, oh, I'm right here. I'm on your street. And I said, okay, I'm waiting for you. And as I was climbing into the truck to go meet her, we lost her, and she went on her own. But if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have waited for the vet. I would have just ended it for her.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard.
And that's it's a hard lesson. It's really hard. And a lot of that was because it was so ingrained in my mind, too, from my previous life. You can't just take an animal out of its misery. People are going to say something. Somebody's going to do something about it. PETA's going to be at my door.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a funny thing. It's yet another one of those things that people have lost touch with. I mean, I've seen many times over, people who will criticize someone else for killing an animal, whether it be because putting them down is the humane thing to do, or because for the purpose of butchering, and the other person has a really big problem with that, and yet they are someone who is eating meat from the grocery store and doesn't realize that the meat that they're eating from the grocery store, that animal was probably really, really poorly treated and in overcrowded conditions and blah, 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 all of the things that happen in a commercial setting. And it's like, okay, well, you're only criticizing because you've removed yourself from the food chain, essentially.
Right.
Right. You have a luxury of not having to do this.
Well, and this is the scary part, and this is why, why I personally was, trying to figure out these puzzles, and how I came to your channel on YouTube with the Oppenheimer Ranch Project is because what it comes down to is because they've removed themselves, what are they going to do when there are things that upset this food chain that are now currently in motion?
They're going to starve unless they figure it out. That's the reality.
And it's happening quicker and faster than anybody could ever imagine. And I think it was done by design. And now people have some type of grudge against those of us who either decide to grow our own food or raise our own animals, but yet we're giving the utmost care and respect for these things, but yet we should just give that up and go to a store just because.
Yeah, there's a total level of, just, I don't know what you want to call it, but disrespect for doing things yourself.
Yeah.
Which is really unfortunate, and it goes back to that dependency on the system. I think people have been given the message that that's the right thing, to be dependent. But
or that it's not, and I think I had brought this up. I can't remember which program is either on Proof Negative somewhere. I'm on air 12 hours a week on this network, so I don't know where I was when I said this. But I think that what it comes down to is when people are brought this idea of, you're beneath something. You shouldn't go help and work as a farmhand because that job is too good for you. You should live in the city and have 2.5 kids and a picket fence because, rural life just shouldn't fit you. These types of ideas that have been set and ingrained in society have moved them away from wanting to be self-sufficient, and it all has to do with things like Agenda 2030 and Strong Cities Initiative, moving resources away from rural areas and communities that build themselves up and putting those resources only in the urban communities.
Yeah, and you want to talk about being ostracized for trying to do self-sustaining type things. One of the main things that I can name for myself personally, and I started this long before I started the homesteading life, was homeschooling my children. And you want some people to lose their mind. Live in Pennsylvania in one of these neighborhoods and be homeschooling your children. Children and youth are at your door every other week. They want proof that your kids are in school. They want proof that you're doing this and proof that you're doing that and proof. And it's the same people that call every week, same caseworker they send out every week, same paperwork they look at every week. When I first moved out here to Colorado, I can't tell you how much I was looking over my shoulder for somebody to question me about homeschooling my kids. I was just waiting. I was waiting for it because it happens no matter where I am. I moved like 4 different places to stop people from calling children and youth because I was homeschooling my kids. Not because I was doing anything wrong or they could open a case, but, it gets tiring having to do this every week with these same people. And, so I've moved neighborhoods, I've moved towns, I've moved counties, and still it's happening. So when I came out here, I was like looking over my shoulder, and you know what? It is the one thing that I have not had any questions about here is homeschooling my children. Nobody asks about that other than, oh, you homeschool? Congratulations. That's all I ever get.
It is a beautiful thing to, I'll just, 2 examples here. As far as being self-sufficient, we live in a river valley here that I absolutely love for the fact that there are a lot of people that are doing similar kinds of self-sufficient things here. And for us, for the future, in terms of grand solar minimum and a changing climate, knowing that these people are here and many of them have different skills than we do and raise different animals that we do, I'm very happy about that because it means that in all likelihood we have a really good opportunity for trade of goods and services. Also, we have a good friend that lives on this road in this river valley who has 3 boys, all of whom are homeschooled, and they are the most spectacular kids. They're really smart. They're really curious. They ask questions. They want to learn. They're so much fun to be around because they just absorb. They just want to know everything. And that is not something that I encounter with most other children. I don't spend a lot of time interacting with kids, but I don't see that at all.
I'm going to be 100% honest. In Pennsylvania, and you're absolutely right, homeschool kids are very like that. My 2 even same way. They're very inquisitive. They're very questionable. They want to know
They're a little
everything.
too
Their
smart
brain
for their
is
own
just,
good, though. I'll say that.
Yeah. Okay. Their brains are just absorbing everything. And when we lived in Pennsylvania and they were homeschooled, and we would go somewhere like the store, and they'd be like, Mom, I want to pay for my own stuff. And you'd give them their money, and they'd go up there, and they'd be like, okay, so it's $3, and they're counting, and, like, the cashier would get upset, like, you know, they need to hurry up, and they don't want to help them, or they don't want to do any, you know, they don't count the change back to them. They just kind of throw it at them with their receipt, and it's just kind of like it's a burden to answer a thing, you know, or the repairman comes over to fix something, and the kids are looking over his shoulder going, okay, so that wire goes to what again? And the guy's like, could you just leave me alone and let me do my job? And I've noticed here, I take my kids somewhere, and my kids are like, Mom, I'm paying for my own stuff. They walk up to the counter. That cashier is like looking at my kids, and she's looking at me. And then when she's all done and she's counted back their change, and she's been so polite and so sweet to them, she'll look at me and say, they're homeschooled, aren't they?
That's awesome.
You know, and you're like, yes, but people here want to take that time. They want to teach them something. You know, a new thing that they've been doing. My husband is a stonemason, and he was doing a job for a gentleman that also homeschooled his kids when they were our kids' age. And when he found out that Jason was homeschooling, he says, you don't bring them to work. And he's like, nobody ever wants me to bring my kids to work. And he's like, but if you don't mind, I'd love to bring them. They spend a whole month, you know, taking turns every other day. You know, I call them Older and Mouth. So Older would go one day, and then Mouth would go the next day. And they spent an entire month going to work with Dad. And not only did they go to work, they got paid to go to work. And they learned how to do masonry. My kids can mix mud and build a wall.
Fabulous. It brings to mind, you know, something else that we've lost completely culturally, which is apprenticeship.
Yes,
you know, what better way to learn how to do something useful in life? I mean, don't get me wrong. I was very lucky, and I had an amazing education, and I don't, you know, I wouldn't trade that for anything. However, there's a limit to, you know, book schooling and how useful it's going to be in your future life. You know, it certainly did not prepare me for anything that I'm doing now. And, you know, even I suffer a bit from, you know, maybe being hesitant to learn something new that I've never done before, learning by doing. I can sometimes get really hesitant about that. And, you know, I might run back to a book first to, like, you know, get my feet wet and, you know, not feel scared about it or whatever it is. But there really is no substitute for learning by doing, you know, and then having something really specialized that you really know how to do. And that can lead into other things that you figure out how to do. And it allows you to be resourceful and creative and inventive and all of these things.
Well, you know, and not to get political at all, but I think one of the things that have disappointed me was that there was, you know, a lot of announcements at the beginning of Donald Trump's presidency about bringing back vocational schools and apprenticeships, and I was very excited about this idea because that could revitalize America, you know, to put people in who don't necessarily fit in with the academia crowd like they make everyone be now, when some people are truly made to work with their hands and truly made to be in different professions that they're not allowing people really to be in, that, you know, apprenticeship and you know, these qualities, you know, my honey, you know, wanted to get into fixing cars and mechanics, and he found a boss and a job who was willing to apprentice him and say, hey, we'll teach you everything that we know, and we'll help you get in school, and we'll help you do stuff, and otherwise we'll teach you everything we know here so you have years of experience. And, you know, that's how jobs should be for people, and that's something that we have removed from our idea of society, that I think if we don't bring back skills
and we
something like the Grand Solar Minimum and or any other natural disaster, economic breakdown, collapse that we always talk about, you know, on my program, Clarity After Dark, we're going to have serious issues if these skill sets do not return or at least have been brought back to the forefront of people's minds. Nobody's going to be, you know, overnight professionals, but I think we have to start making those moves.
And I believe that we undermine a lot of the skills that we learn within those skills. You know, and I'm going to give a really good, for instance, Mal just turned 11, so now we understand why we call him Mal. And, you know, again, he's homeschooled, so it's questioned everything, so he's really Mal. And, you know, he just turned 11, and he went to work with Dad for a whole month. So he can build a wall, big deal. No, that is a big deal because that wall means he can also build a house if he needs one. But more importantly, the skills that he learned within the skill of learning to build that wall. He learned to read a tape measure. He learned to make sure that those rocks are aligned on particular points, otherwise the whole thing's going to collapse. He learned how to make the mud, which means he had to learn how to mix and put enough water, put enough mixture, put enough of whatever the other thing is, because I'm not a mason and I don't know.
I don't know. We're not stonemasons.
it's some weird powdery stuff that like soaks up all soaks up all liquid, and it's crazy stuff. And they come home with their hands all cracked up from it because it soaked all the moisture out of their hands. And you know, he's learned to do that. He's learned to use tools that most people
learned
have
the value
totally
of time as he was getting paid for his time.
Right, and he got paid for his time, and he got paid very well. He got paid $10 an hour. And
yeah, they did get paid very, very well. And it also taught them after they got their paychecks, you know, what it was like to go out and buy things for the homestead, what it's like to spend money, you know, how money goes fast, which a lot of kids do not have any experience with. You know, hell, adults don't even have experience with it, to be truthful.
That is very true.
And the other thing about apprenticeship, too, it's just like, I mean, so many of the trade skills have been utterly devalued, right? You know, like if you're a smart person, you're not supposed to do that stuff. This conversation just reminded me that there was actually an apprenticeship program in my high school, you know, that was generally how it was viewed. It's like, oh, this is for the dumb kids. But that's
right.
You
know, if you want to be anything,
that's total
you
BS.
have this skill set, you have to go through XYZ steps, of which, you know, 50, 75 years ago, furniture makers were some of the most renowned in the world. You know, people who had these particular skills, gunsmiths. You know, a particular show I've been enjoying, I don't watch TV that much, but when I do, there's a show called Forged in Fire, where they get these guys who have backyard forges and have gotten into the idea of forging, and come and do contests, you know, to show and keep this art of bending metal alive, which I think is important.
Scarlett, you have no idea. You have no idea. That's yet another show that we could be on because just wait. Jason had a forge. We gave it up when we moved over here. He'll be getting it back when we move over there.
Right. This is true. Talk about these things that we could come up with, because you know life sometimes is stranger than reality television. But you know these are the skills that I think have been devalued, and this is kind of what I've been talking about with you know the farming and these different industries that have been devalued to make people feel like it's a less than human job or less than desirable, and if you do those jobs you will never amount to anything, and you know academia is the only way, and I think that was a totally wrong thing because there is something for everyone.
You know, I think it also, and my husband will kick me in the butt if I do not mention, that he is what they call an old-time stonemason. They do not use power tools. They use very specialized rock hammers, bunches of different sizes, shapes, craziness. Very expensive hammers that he's always breaking.
Well, and if there were more people in trades, there'd be more free market access to those things, too. So I think that we all run into these glitches and issues that we've put ourselves into as society, and if we don't start valuing these ideals and these skills, once again, I think we're going to be in really dire straits coming sooner rather than later.
So that's one of the things, and the other thing that he'll kick me for not mentioning, because this is one of his biggest things about taking the kids to work with him, he says that the bonding that they get while they're there and nobody else is around them and they're working together and they have this flow and this thing going, the father-son bond that he's getting while he's doing that, he's like, I've never felt that there, the whole time until going and doing this with them. And I think that's something we're missing when we do away with these apprenticeships, because a lot of these apprenticeships were fathers teaching their sons, and this is where this family break comes, because we're not teaching our children anything anymore, the system.
Yeah. This is a really good point. I mean, it's like for so many generations, the chain of knowledge, of skills was passed through families and whatnot, and that doesn't happen very often now. I mean, this is a bit of an aside, but I was reflecting on, my mother passed away in February, and one of the things that my mother was an amazing seamstress, and she was also an amazing cook. And for some reason, we never did these things together, and I don't know why that is exactly. But, gosh darn it, why didn't I learn these things from her? Fortunately, I learned how to do them later on, and I feel like in some respect I managed to channel her genetic memory in a lot of respects. Some of these things are like things that I just decided that I wanted to learn how to do out of the blue, completely out of the blue. I taught myself how to knit, for instance, and my urge to do that came out of nowhere.
This winter. I'm about to do that this next winter, teach myself how to knit.
Yeah. I'm so glad I did it, because it's an amazing skill. It's going to be very useful in the future and currently. And I mean, how many people can say that they can make a sweater for themselves? I would so much rather make my own sweater or make Diamond a sweater instead of going and buying one at the store.
Heck yeah.
It's
and
so much more satisfying.
And crocheting, that's the other one I want to learn.
Yeah. For some reason, it seems like for some reason it seems like people who learn how to knit don't want to crochet, and vice versa. And I don't know why that is. And I know it's true for me. I'm a knitter, but I'm not a crocheter. I'm just not interested in crochet. It makes no sense.
Now, see, this is where I kick myself in the butt, because my mother knows how to do both, and she does that.
Oh.
And she creates amazing things all the time.
Why you drop the ball, Russ?
Dogs. Huh?
Why you drop the ball, Russ?
Well, like I said, my mother creates a lot of amazing things, mostly for dogs. She's an amazing, I wouldn't call her a seamstress, but she makes these amazing cooling coats for dogs. My mother's in the show dog area of life, so she makes all these crazy things, and I look back now and I'm like, why didn't I ever let this woman teach me how to do these things? I was so stupid. I was just so dumb.
And you could be knitting things for your chickens right now.
Yes, see? Yes, exactly.
I always sound ridiculous. Yes. I want goats in pajamas. I want chickens with vests. I want it.
I've seen some pictures of chickens in ridiculous get-ups. I mean, just kind of make you go, why?
Adorable in the little vests, little booties with their feet.
You know what, Leah? I'm not going to lie. I'm that crazy person. And when I'm going to do this, I will be doing that. Make no mistake. Look for the pictures, because it will be there.
Yeah, your excuse can be that it's a good way to practice.
Oh, they're about a good size, truly.
Yes, and goat pajamas. I'm all about this. I got to get some goats in pajamas.
It's pretty cute.
At least once, just for me, because I really love the idea. They look adorable when they're small. It's so darn cute, and then their tails just hang out the back. It's so cute.
Yeah,
I just find it too adorable. But I think that's these ideas, of, animals being cute and adorable and sustaining have been removed, I do believe, through ways of being you don't have to follow in your parents' footsteps, and it's not important, to hold these skills from family and tradition. These are reasons why countries and other areas like Europe have held on to history longer, is because these things have been passed down. We have no generational lineage and history anymore. It's, everybody's kind of skipping around to what they want to do, and without really having any purpose. And I think some of these things that they've thought may not be for them.
And
I'm going to regret later on in life.
I have found a way to make myself, when I learn how to do this, and I actually do put vests on chickens because it's going to happen. I have found a way to rationalize this with myself, because cold here, and if it, I can give them little vests, and if that's not enough, then my little heat rocks, I can put in their little vests for them, and then they have little vests to hold their little heat rocks.
You could just have a little rock pocket for them. Oh, I'm loving this.
See? I found a reason to make the vest. I still haven't really found a reason for the goats and pajamas yet, but I'm working on it.
Well, see, when they're little and born in winter, they need a little bit to just keep warm, just a little bit.
That was my hashtag, crazy chicken lady thing.
True. Well, you have to come up with creative ideas when you have no electricity as well, too. So my suggestion to Red was using, like warmed rocks, in different places, and, little small pebbles and stones, just kind of keep them warm at night, and kind of put them in their little brooding boxes and give them a little extra warmth.
That's a very good thing. Leah, do you have electric out there?
We do have electric here. So this lot that we're on right now, we bought with the shell of the building already on it, and it already had electric running to it. So we've got a little bit of a start there. It's it's a little minimal because we're not really fully wired. So we basically have our trailer hooked into the electric. And hopefully before the fall we'll have our residential space kind of set up and fully wired, and a lot of the wiring is done at this point.
Right.
Yeah. So that
was
helped.
Just curious.
Yeah.
My lot, I don't have electric. We just started our solar, and that's like a new thing. We're just getting used to it. And we only have a 100-watt panel right now. And so we're able to run a couple of things, and that's all brand new. We just got that in the last 2 months. So
yeah,
that's
sort of what
thing,
That's sort of what we did when we first got here. So we actually have another lot here, and there's nothing on that property. And so we were living at our trailer there, and that's basically what we did. We had like a little 40-watt panel, we used that to keep our batteries charged, and just used electric really minimally. And we are going to be doing actually 2 big solar installs fairly soon. We happened to catch a really good deal from a company called Wholesale Solar, so we jumped on it. So hopefully before the fall we'll have all of that up and running, which would be really cool. Because once that happens, we'd like to get off grid and just unhook from the grid completely. We're not going to do a grid tie.
We have done totally. We started off grid, and now we kind of got this messed up thing because I'm not going to lie. We had a fire in Pennsylvania, and we were in our apartment, and we were literally talking with my children's biological father. And he was in a position that wasn't very good, and we were like swimming in debt and bills. And we had just sat down and talked about combining households because he couldn't live and help take care of the kids at the same time and financially. So we had just talked about combining households and like all getting a place together. And then the very next morning after we, kind of sat down, talked about it, we're like, let's wait and see if we get a sign. God's going to lead us in the right direction. Our apartment burned down. Hey!
Wow.
I didn't need that immediate of a sign. Okay?
This is why we always talk about be careful with the intention that you put out because, you might be asked to see a change of scenery and then you ask for a little too much.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So we ended up taking a deal with some people that we thought were friends, and we were supposed to do this fixer-upper rent-to-own type of a deal with this house that they had that was, like, condemned when we moved in. And we put in about $6,000 of work, and we paid a whole lot of money. And then all of a sudden she decided, when it passed inspection finally, that we couldn't live there anymore, and she didn't want to sell it to us. And when this happened, we were crushed, and we were like, you know what? This isn't our dream anyway. We're in town. We never wanted to be in town. I got online, and I started looking for stuff, and I find this property, and I talked to the guy. It's rent-to-own. It's great. And I agree to everything. I think I'm talking about this property in Pennsylvania. When it comes down to sending him money and actually doing all of this and meeting up for the property, I realized I just bought 15 acres in Colorado.
And here you are.
Not at all my plan.
Oh, it gets better. It gets better.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, it gets better because then we're like, oh, crap. And I'm like, well, husband, and, I call him Bell, which is my children's father. Bell, I messed up and I bought us land in Colorado. And they're like, well, guess we're going to Colorado. And we took a year and we planned and as much as we could and got everything together, and we packed everything we owned. And, right before we were leaving, the trailer, the axle broke. So that put us down a trailer. And then Bell took his truck. We were supposed to be coming down with a trailer, 2 trucks, and a Lincoln Navigator. And so, we thought we were going to be able to bring all this stuff with us and really be prepared for this homestead thing that we were going to do. And we were psyched to start out. We knew that we had bought 15 acres. We knew it had nothing on it. And, the only part we really didn't know is that it was in Colorado until it was too late. So next thing you know, not only does the trailer axle break, but the engine goes out on the Navigator. Now, the 2 men of the Homestead pull their craft together as fast as they can, because at the same time that the engine goes on the Navigator, the other truck that Bell just bought, he's only had it for 2 months, takes it for the last inspection that we ever have to get in stupid Pennsylvania, and it doesn't pass because the frame is rusted out. Literally to the point that they looked at him and said, we don't know how the whole bed and ass of the truck hasn't fallen off by now.
I probably shouldn't be laughing.
Oh, no, it laughed because that's all we could do. And so at a last-ditch effort, the 2 men of the Homestead, I'm going to give them total props right now, because they took the engine from said truck that was worthless now to make a journey all the way from Pennsylvania to Colorado and bring stuff. We took the engine out of that and dropped it into the Lincoln Navigator. Sold the shell of the truck to the junkyard for $400, and, that supplied some gas and stuff for the journey. And because, we had to do this really not as prepared as we'd like to be. We didn't have some big nest egg saved up. We were kind of coming on 3 paychecks that we could save what we could from, and both final paycheck and then the unemployment check. So we've got, everything is lined up as we can. We finally get to Colorado, which I'm not even going to go through this experience of getting here. It was horrendous. We finally get here. We get to the property. We call the guy. We're like, we're here to tell him we're here. And the phone is disconnected. So I'm like, okay, well, let's go to this address because, he's been mailing me stuff from this address. Go to this address. There's nothing there.
Oh, my.
Go to the town hall. Talk to the people there. They don't know this guy. They don't know anything about him. They've never heard about him. And so then I tell them what I bought. They start laughing at me hysterically, and they're like, honey, you didn't buy that because that didn't belong to that person. Oh. This was an a Colorado internet scheme that was going around. So now here I am with my entire family, a dog, a cat, 3 bearded dragons, and everything we own, and we don't even have property. We don't know anybody. We have, no cash because we're waiting on the deposit to go through from unemployment, which somehow was supposed to be there last week and didn't make it. And we're just like, oh, my God, we had enough money for one night in a hotel. We went, we stayed there. Husband talks to the guy. Guy says, oh, you guys can camp up in the woods for free till you figure stuff out, Still no unemployment check. We've been calling Pennsylvania. All this crap's going on. They didn't deposit it. They sent a check, and we don't live there anymore. So this is an issue, and now we got to wait for the check to return to them for them to now cancel it and deposit. It's a mess. We wake up the day that the deposit's supposed to hopefully come in again, and we're snowed in. Like snow above the tent.
And she's in like a trapper
like,
tent. Oh, not that, no, first tent. Nope, first tent.
Yeah, it was the first tent. Still pretty high. It's a 10-person tent.
Still pretty high, yeah. I was going to say, it's still pretty high where you don't want to wake up like that. Like, hello, son.
Okay. It's above the tent, which means it's above my head. The
True.
reason that we know this
you're
is
small.
Because,
That's true.
the reason we know this is because I was still trying to be pushy at the time, and I have massage tables from my Reiki work and things, and I was sleeping on a massage table in the tent. And I woke up to the tent laying on my face.
Good morning.
With snow. And I freaked. And then, we wrecked the vehicle trying to get off that mountain, and then we finally got off the mountain, but Belle did not. Belle ended up snowed in on that mountain for 2 days in the Lincoln Navigator on the side, crashed with all the animals because he would not get into the other vehicle without the animals, and we could not fit everybody in the other vehicle with the animals. And nobody would go up and get him. Any emergency or anything like that was worthless to even talk to because nobody would go up there. They would go up there for him, but it would still be the same situation. They wouldn't bring the animals, and he wasn't going to leave without them. So that turned out to be a beautiful moment for him, in all honesty. He found some spirituality up there on that mountain during those 2 days, and he came down from there a totally different man, I'm not going to lie. He had written letters to all of us because he wasn't sure if he was making it back off that mountain. And, we ended up just bounced around, and then we bought this property over here, and then somebody talked us into buying half of their property at another place and then decided they didn't want us to buy the property anymore, so now we got to go back to the other place. And where we're going back to, we can get electric. We can get electric easy. There's a pole right there. It would cost us $0 to nothing to actually have them put the blocks in. But the problem is we're like, don't want to be on the grid.
Right.
We started off the grid. I want to stay that way. So rather than making any investment that way, we said, you know what, we found a really good deal, too, for the 100-watt panel and the entire setup that we needed, and we only paid $200 total. So,
but I think those personal journey moments, though, too, that when you're homesteading or trying to be self-sufficient, these are the decisions you have to make that become into, I guess, homestead spirituality. What do you feel comfortable with giving up? What feels good to you? And what makes your idea of the dream? Because I think once you start letting others define it or give you ideas on it, I think it ruins the essence and it ruins the power, because really what it is your homestead, your self-sustaining lifestyle is your legacy.
Yeah. It's what you're leaving behind.
Well, and also, the way a lot of these choices and or maybe not even choices sometimes, the way things come to pass, it's like, you ended up homesteading in Colorado in a very roundabout, sort of screwed up path. What a story. I know that
I'm writing a book about this.
Good.
I'm not even lying. I am.
it's really hard to not get frustrated when things, go south or don't go the way you wanted or the way that you expected. But the way, I feel like you have to look at it, it's like, okay, well, that wasn't, whatever it is for you, God or your higher power or whatever, or the universe, it wasn't your higher power's will for you. It was something else that, and ultimately you got there. Long before I knew Diamond, I had been looking for land on the East Coast for a long time. And I looked up in Vermont and New Hampshire, never really found what I was looking for. Prior to that, I had been looking in Pennsylvania for a long time, but I didn't want to do it because, so much of the state of Pennsylvania is fracked, so a lot of the water is bad. And I didn't want to deal with that. I wanted good, clean water for the long haul.
Thank God, because that state just sucks it right out of you, man.
Oh, God, yeah. And, it was like, we sort of started, Diamond and I sort of started talking about, maybe looking in the Southwest, and then we just took a trip around Colorado, sort of the heck of it, and then we looked at a lot here in Pagosa Springs, kind of on a lark, and then we get to this lot, and we went, oh, my God, this is what we're looking for. In terms of, the ecological niche that it occupied. Now, interestingly, one of the reasons that we have this other lot that we're on now is it ultimately wasn't exactly what we're looking for, and that is more of a people problem more than anything else. Which I won't get into here because that is a really long, ridiculous story.
Hold on, but we've been saying that this whole issue in life, is what we call, whatever people want to call this issue we have as human beings and Americans. We call it a people problem.
Yeah. And it's a really big people problem that, fortunately for the moment, is quiet. But
But to know that, you know what I mean? It's always nice to hear that because we like to hear people problems on the downturn.
Yeah. But ultimately, I feel like there are some very good practical reasons for being where we are now. I mean, that first lot is up at 8,500 feet. And it is well inside the National Forest, which also means that it's accessed primarily by Forest Service roads, which are only, you're plowing yourself, unless there's a group of people that are getting together to pay for it. And it's a lot of miles to plow. It's like, ultimately it's like, 15 miles, some of which is plowed by the county. Yeah. But, it's at least 8 miles, and this is steep, winding mountain road. The lot that we're on right now, we're down at 6,700 feet, and that changes things dramatically for us for the winter. It makes things a heck of a lot easier. We don't get nearly as much snow down here. It melts faster, all of that. There's a lot of benefits to being down here. Plus, we're now, like I mentioned earlier, we're in this river valley where there's a lot of really awesome people as opposed to problem people down here. And that's great, and I feel like that bodes very well for us for the future in terms of working with our community.
Well, and I think that's what everybody needs to be doing, and in Red's area as well over in the San Luis Valley, they have people who are working together and creating these ideas. But I think wherever you're at in the USA, you need to get with like-minded people who are thinking like you, who have the same goals, and if you can't find those people, create it. I mean, you just have to do it at this point.
Yeah.
Your survival depends on it. You're not, a lot of people think they're just going to be a one-man band, and, with the Grand Solar Minimum and possible other kinks that could come into the coil, I just think it's important that you try to find networks of those who are willing to work together and want to make this a better place, because I think that's the only way we're going to get through it. If everybody still wants to be in their own corner, how much progress will we make?
Yeah, and your chances
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say your chances of survival, let's say, in Grand Solar Minimum without a community are probably pretty small.
Very small, unless you're very good at bridging or have, jack of all trade skills. And I mean,
but even just for the reason, too, that, there's going to come a point where, socially speaking, things are really going to break down. And as Anita Bailey, the author of Cold Times, likes to put it, you have to sleep sometime. So for that very reason, you need other people with you.
Yes.
You're not going to be able to be a zombie up 4 hours a day, basically paranoid out of your kazoo. That's just not going to work. Or being hostile to everyone that comes around you. For your mental health, we are not made as solitary beings, and so, a lot of these people thinking about the apocalypse and all these things, I think get themselves ready for a very solitary idea that will break down humanity very fast.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I was going to bring up, which, again, not that I like to get political, but sadly we actually have to look at the reality right now. We just found Syria, Russia's threatening us. Guys, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have to think about how they're feeling. Their brothers and sisters and family are being killed, and Russians are being killed, and how would we like it? We don't. And so, when you think about it from a human perspective, people get emotional over that, and why wouldn't they retaliate?
Right. And what that means for those that are living in this system, in this grid, if they decide to retaliate against us.
Well, and the system technically is already retaliating, against us, whether you want to call it coincidence or not. We're watching, future markets go extreme for agriculture and commodities. We're seeing massive jumps just since January in pricing and these things that will break down society. People aren't thinking about, how fast food even goes in a snowstorm and people all going to the store. And, if that breaks down even one day, we've seen the actual consequences of what occurs. That on a large scale, can we even handle it when most people don't even have room for humanity in their hearts?
Yeah, already, we're seeing massive losses across the Midwest, and an inability to plant a lot of the spring crops because there's heavy snow coverage and the soil temperatures are not warm enough. We already had losses like this last year, and we were digging into silo stores. So, not looking really good for
everybody I know, and I do live in Minnesota, which is, a part of the grain belt. And, we all kind of noticed last year, even us backyard gardeners, that, food just wasn't growing right. We were all questioning kind of what was happening, and I hadn't, found anything about the grand solar minimum yet or anything like that. What got me into it was finding out the connections between hurricanes and low pressure systems, which opened up the door to the grand solar minimum and what could be affecting it. And that's how I got into this. I was already into understanding crop loss and following this extreme weather, but, it opened up new doors to where it's going to be pretty serious sooner rather than later, and I'm very concerned for people in general because they're not thinking about how quickly this is going to go downhill for all of us.
Yeah, and they've also been brainwashed is the other problem. There's a tremendous amount of propaganda in the mainstream media, and there's a lot of blatant lying. And things like, this line that's going around the media right now that there's a heat wave in the Arctic, absolutely false. It is well below freezing. Never happened at any point. And it's just like, it's amazing to me. It's been 4 decades of psychological manipulation, and it's complete. What people will believe coming out of the mainstream media, the most ridiculous, illogical statements, and people buy it, hook, line, and sinker. And that's really unfortunate because they have been set up to be unprepared. And I truly believe that's all about preventing social panic.
Yeah, because, I've explained before, too, with, dispatching in last year's hurricanes and things, government's not coming to save you, and if they are, there's going to even be a nefarious, if not clandestine operation. We saw it during Hurricane Harvey. They were literally taking people out. It's a very unfortunate thing, leaving them to drown, flushing out areas with water, systematically with the Army Corps of Engineers letting out certain areas while people were in their homes when they told them to go back to these areas. Things that you wouldn't believe the government did. And if you think they're coming to save you, they left some of these people for 5, 6, 7 days. people night one didn't even have water. I mean, it was the most heartbreaking thing to talk to these people and try to calm their fears, because there was a group of us volunteers, thousands of us, who are working with Cajun Navy and other groups, who created online databases to be able to dispatch to these people, because the 911 systems were completely gridlocked. You couldn't get a hold of the Coast Guard, so all we could try to do was get some good old boys with boats and trucks to get out to them and talk to them like 911 dispatchers in the meantime. That's all we could do. And we heard some of the most heartbreaking things. You know, most of us lost people who were on the lines. I mean, it was just the most heartbreaking thing you've ever been through, and the government was nowhere to be found. So I think people really believe that they're going to be there, but there is no way that you can evacuate any American city at all. No. So the danger in that is that. Hello?
Yeah, okay, so she did just go away?
Yeah. I'm still here.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Loss of connection, I suppose. Well, on that same topic, I mean, you know, there's no way. There is no way that our government can take care of the population here. I mean, it's impossible. You know, there's just simply not enough. And, you know, as it is, let's say like during the Maunder minimum, which, you know, started around 1650 or so up into the beginning of the 18th century, you know, something on the order of like 25% of the population died. And there were many fewer people on the planet then than there are now. You know, and add to that we have this completely interdependent global systematic structure that cannot survive something like this. So, I mean, there's no way to distribute, you know, food and supplies and take care of all those people. It's just not possible. So the only thing you can do is, you know, keep people from panicking as long as you can, because when they do start to panic, that's a whole nother can of worms that you have to deal with. And, you know, just keep lying to them.
Yeah, you just keep shuffling them around, you know, like they've done in Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Harvey. You just keep, you know, promising them, oh, the next day it'll be better, and you just keep stringing them along. And I think anybody who believes that line, they just do not have the resources. You know, Puerto Rico is still without power months later. They keep having things hit them, but yet we're having MLB baseball games there like nothing happened. I mean, it's just out of control. You know, the Minnesota Twins went down there, and it's just absolutely insane. I mean, you know, meanwhile, we're sitting here under, you know, 2 feet of snow plus, because, you know, they're never going to report the actual true numbers of what we have on the ground here. I mean, you know, Winter Storm Xanto was actually pretty intense. I mean, you know, I've never really seen too many storms like that up here, and we're pretty winter hardy in Minnesota. I mean, we've seen our share of but, you know, those winds and the blowing snow and the drifts, I mean, we have 5-6 foot drifts in places. Wow. You know, this is not something that we even see in the winter very often. We're usually spared. It's usually, you know, North Dakota, South Dakota. So for it to sustain blizzard conditions all the way through Minneapolis, and even when the blizzard warning was in effect, the news and Weather Channel still were like, well, it's not quite blizzard conditions. The National Weather Service has said it is. They even still, during the middle of a blizzard, try to say, well, it's not quite blizzard conditions. Well, why has the National Weather Service issued a blizzard warning for the next 12 hours?
And by the way, it's still the warmest year on record. Not
at all. You know, and I mean, and that's the most interesting thing is we were literally in the freezer for a month and a half, you know, while the rest of the country wasn't paying attention, while I was, you know, freezing to death up here every night, you know, negative 25, negative 15 every single night. You know, those type of temperatures sustain that long. We don't see very often either. I mean, we are not, I mean, we get Arctic temperatures, but we are not the tundra. And to still know that our lakes still have over a foot of ice on them, they're going to, for the first time ever, we're going to be ice fishing on opener. No lakes will have ice out before May 12th for the first time in history.
I just saw that news.
Did you? Yeah. Yeah.
And, I had kind of called it about 3 weeks ago, when, to my honey was, doing the research with the Grand Solar Minimum and then just knowing his lake reports when he's been going out that he's still able to go out on the ice. It's absolutely insane. By now, ice should have broke through. We should be getting ready to, to put boats on for the opener. It'll still be cold. But this is absolutely insane to still need augers, and he almost needed an auger extension. So we're talking, almost, 36 inches of blade that all of a sudden you might need an extension for now because, you're hitting at the bottom of your auger and you can't even get through to the last layer of ice.
Yeah.
It's insane. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, and, a lot of the northern shipping routes are still clogged up with ice, too, and that's probably going to last for a while, and that's going to wreak real havoc with distribution of a lot of different things. And,
well, and I'm sure that the shipping lanes usually do open probably early June, but with lakes not even opening, I know that some inlets to rivers won't be opening, so you're absolutely right, and we do channel, a lot of grain through Minneapolis all the way down the Mississippi through the Gulf, and is the grain even there? General Mills, which is, just a couple miles from my home, has already announced that their food prices are going up. Their grain prices are increasing. We're starting to see the signs everywhere, even in the mainstream, which should concern people. Before when it's just all of us, you could say, oh, look at those heretics, conspiracy theories, stuff, in their little circles talking. But once the mainstream has talked about it, and I found it interesting the last 3 months that a lot of these topics we've been echoing, we're seeing in the mainstream, like Grand Solar Minimum, crop loss, food loss, these things that we're talking about to where, a lot of people who are close to me can no longer deny these things I'm telling them.
Yeah. Yeah, the gig is kind of up. So I think at this point the mainstream media really has no choice but to at least start using the right terms. There's still a lot of misconceptions in the mainstream media. It's not very accurate. And, for a little while we were seeing things like there would be reporting about, when big volcanoes go off, that can cause a drop in temperature for a couple of years. Well, that's true. And grand solar minimums also mean that volcanoes tend to erupt. Because it excites the muons in the earth, and that creates some lava movement, and also there is a warming of lava underneath the earth, and there's also crustal cooling. So you've got one body that's contracting and one that's expanding. So you've got an earth that's trying to readjust, and that creates faults and earthquakes and volcanoes as well. But, so you'll see it being passed off as like, okay, well, if a volcano goes off, the temperature will drop for a couple of years, but that's it. That's all there is to it. Well, no, that's not true. Nor are volcanoes responsible for grand solar minimums. The sun is responsible for that, and the sun is responsible for volcanoes going off, ultimately, in cosmic rays. So, it's like you see these drips and drabs, but there's all these misconceptions, and it always comes down to, don't worry because it'll be over quick, or don't worry because global warming will supersede any of this cooling, which is not true at all. Man does not have the force of magnitude that the sun does in any way, shape, or form, not even close.
Well, and we're seeing articles like, volcanoes going off last year, like at Ambe, more CO2 than mankind has put out all year.
Yeah, and meanwhile,
they start to admit things like that, but yet don't want to say CO2 is the cause, but yet, volcanoes are pumping out, 10 times as much than what man can do.
Well, and not only that, but in a long geological scale, we are at one of the lowest level of CO2 ever. 400 parts per million is nothing compared to 4,000 parts per million, which has been seen in the past. And CO2 has never been this low.
Why have we forgotten that CO2 feeds plants, makes them green, gives them oxygen? My son watched a program called Sid the Science Kid. It's a little PBS cartoon. That they have this song called Trees, Beautiful Trees, where it talks about they take in the carbon dioxide through their leaves and give out oxygen for everyone to breathe. And so why has everyone forgot this, that they're teaching in children's programs, acting like CO2 is the devil, we must extract it from the universe, and then wonder why all the plants and everything is dying? This makes no sense.
And we're treating it like a pollutant as well. Which
all you deniers should be hung. All be
there he is.
Buried in a hole.
Yeah, we're terrible. conspiracy theorists, climate deniers.
We're awful. We're awful people for thinking this,
Yeah, for actually speaking the truth.
Well, using their own science with them. I mean, it's not even against them. It's just with them, showing them the same things that they've showed us through data and facts and science, that somehow they want to refute if they want to have a specific narrative.
Yeah. And some of that data has been manipulated as well. Some of the warming data anyway, and that's really unfortunate as well.
The global warming people are picking up the grand solar minimum narrative. There's headlines today coming out that global warming is causing more earthquakes. And there's also headlines coming out today that global warming is causing more volcanoes. This was they dipped into this last December and saying that global warming was causing a volcano in Ecuador to erupt because of the melting glaciers. I mean, it's just a cockamamie. How could you connect those things? Glaciers
well, the one
melting.
thing that I can say that I can connect is I've noticed after the 255,000-foot blast, we have went into the freezer here in Minnesota both times. And so there is some connection with this coldness and these blasts, and if we don't start paying attention, we're going to freeze to death here. I'm under 2 feet of snow. People don't want to wake up yet. I told everybody about the storm. Now they all want to look at me like I'm some storm messiah because I told them that it was coming. No, it's just the grand solar minimum. I've been trying to tell you guys, let's wake up and get together here and figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, we just got a call from somebody earlier this evening who lives in Texas, and, he was just basically calling to say, really appreciate what you're doing and whatnot, and thanks for putting out, good information. And, he was just talking about how he noticed when he was a kid, when Mount St. Helens erupted, that, certainly that following winter and maybe the winter after that got very, very cold. And that's for a very simple reason. Volcanoes go off, put aerosols in the air. That increases cloud nucleation. You get more precipitation, less sun, and you have a higher albedo effect, so it's colder.
Yes, absolutely. And I was going to just slip in there for the funny ha-ha, but maybe not because it could be true. Just watch for the planes flying really low and, people dropping and trying to carry you guys off later, Because we're not supposed to talk about this stuff. This is secret stuff.
Well, it's interestingly sorry, go ahead.
I get that we don't want global panic, but to the point that we have indoctrinated people to believe that without without certain aspects they can't function. Like, for instance, again, going back to the same girl that's like, you're going to eat this egg that came out of your chicken's butt that came from Pennsylvania to visit. She could not wrap her head around, what do you mean there's no electricity? Because at the time we didn't even have solar. And she's like, what do you mean there's no television? What do you mean there's no DVD player? What do you mean there's no Xbox? What do you mean there's no computer? What do you mean there's no lights? And you're like, no, we have lights. They run on propane. And she's like, oh, my God, I can't live like this. Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. She's going to be in for a rude surprise.
It's like, listen, electricity is like the furthest thing that I miss, really, honestly.
Well, we're coming to a dangerous point where people are becoming insanely ignorant to how life should be lived. We're creating a very, I want to say artificial form of life, in our little cardboard box type of, apartments stacked on top of each other, and, urban neighborhoods with all the houses looking the same with teeny tiny yards, and you can't grow food plots and this and that. We've put ourselves into a position where I think that they're too proud to admit that now it's went the other way, and so we're at a dangerous point where I think if people don't wake up right now, and we don't start trying to get people together and really thinking about more than just, this is no longer just a theory. We're watching this play out in front of our eyes, and what are we going to do about it? It could be too late, to mitigate some of these ideas, like for the crops this year. It's going to take about 2 weeks for all this to melt. But if this melts in 2 weeks, we're going to have extreme flooding problems up here. which are going to flood all the fields, which spring planting has already been put back even farther. Buds were coming out on certain plants, all that's done up here. We're going to start seeing this faster and faster and faster. And I just don't know how we prepare ourselves for everyone else's reaction, because at this point nobody's listening to the level that it should be, and I think we're coming to that precipice where it's too late to kind of wake everybody up.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of really unprepared people, and that is a very scary thing to look at in the future.
Yes.
And I'm really glad that we are where we are, because we already have a lot of people here that do tend to take care of themselves and do things for themselves. So that just bodes a lot better for people's reactions. But when we were still in Philly, I had probably a year's worth of food preps in the basement, but we did not want to stay there. As it was, there was already a certain amount of uneasiness just based on changing economics left over from the crash of 2008. And it was a very kind of a scary proposition to, the idea to stay there. And if an event happened and we needed to leave, that's not a place that you can just leave on the same day that everybody else is leaving. If it's a place that has a regular rush hour, you're not getting out when everybody else is getting out. It's not happening, So we were sort of prepared to shelter in place for as long as possible until we could get out. But that was not a future that we wanted to deal with.
No, and that's one of the things, I did say that I have my moments where I'm like, I'm just going to go find a place in town. But then when I stop and I look and I'm like, oh, my gosh, no, I can't put myself that close to unprepared people who I have to question if something happens, what they're coming to take from me. Mm-hmm. Not what they're coming to try to trade with me or offer me or work with me on. No, what are they coming to try to take from me? Because these people in these cities are so integrated on this system and unprepared and living in this la-la fantasy land in the clouds. Nothing's going to go wrong.
Well, not all of us, Red. Some of us do have our head on straight in the city.
The mass majority, and then you look at it and you're like, okay, and then when the system goes down and there's no groceries at the grocery store, where are you going? You're going to the person that has a whole bunch of stuff stacked up because they were preparing, and everybody somehow knows this because one person came over and found out about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And people just don't have that humanity link that, would make it to where, you and I and us, if we came across each other, once, an event occurs, we would be trading with one another. And what can we share? And let's make meals together. Where not everybody has that mindset. And I think the people who have clicked into that and have resonated, have felt this feeling and calling within their soul to come back to this type of village living, will fend well. I think those who don't won't.
Yeah. And, it's like even if you are in a very populated place, there's still a tremendous amount that you can do for yourself. There's all kinds of vertical growing systems and growing you can do inside. And, I
grow on a small apartment balcony that's probably maybe 3 by 8.
Yeah.
And I can grow with a system called a garden grow box. I can grow corn in my system. I can grow melons. I can grow small fruit trees, literally anything and everything. And so I have been able to, with a small apartment garden, grow some of probably the most insane things to my neighbors. Like, this woman has corn every year growing on her small balcony.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's amazing how much food you can pack into a small area.
Well, yeah, because I have these small boxes and everything's either in 5-gallon buckets or these boxes because they're very, economical and they're a self-watering containing system. So, there's a little bit of aquaponics involved. So, the root system is always picking up water and it seems to grow whatever you need perfectly. And, I tell people I have, buckets hung on my railing. I mean, I have everywhere I can grow something, I have somewhere set up to grow. And so that's why I appreciate people, like Ice Age Farmer and myself, who are trying to show people who aren't necessarily rural yet how to mitigate these things somewhere in the middle. I think no matter where you are, you can grow something and try to mitigate those costs. You can, even if you're only buying cheap produce at like the Bob's Produce Ranch to can yourself, you're still going to be better off in the end buying this discount produce and canning it than in the end somebody who has nothing to show for it.
Yeah, most certainly. Does this garden grow box you mentioned, does it produce a compost tea?
It does actually. All your nutrients stay in there and all your fertilizer. So yes, it really does end up being like a compost tea at the bottom of your box.
It sounds very similar to a product that Diamond was just looking at earlier today. I don't think it's the same thing, but looks very similar. Sounds very similar.
Yeah, it's like a gardenpatch.com, I believe, is the website and they're very economical and cheap. And I have about 6 of them, and they work beautiful because they can grow amazing tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini. I've grown, show-stopping, fair-size zucchini on my balcony.
Awesome.
And I would like to enter this little insert that if you go to freedomizerradio.com, we also have a sponsor, Misty Garden. And that is to grow inside, and it's a whole, really cool system.
Aquaponic system. Yeah, absolutely, that you can grow up to 30 different types of plants in this more aquaponic type system. It's more like, just hydroponics, just water, no soil involved, so you just put your plants in there, it grows, it comes with lights. You can use it indoor or outdoor, so for the people who, need space mitigation or need the climate like mine, where nothing's growing outside right now, you can use this and still be able to grow food, because I think it's important no matter which way you can do it, you're going to need to mitigate your costs at this point.
Cool. Cool tips.
Yeah, because I think the thing that most everybody out there is the least prepared for is no matter what we're looking at, whether we're looking at the rapture or we're looking at grand solar minimum or we're looking at, chemical warfare or we're looking at whatever of the many disasters facing us at this moment, or different theories of disasters facing us at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what you're looking at, the one thing that everybody is continually saying, you hear everybody say, oh, it's not affecting me. It's not affecting me. Well, guess what? It is affecting you, but you're not really realizing that it's affecting you. But when you're going to realize it's affecting you is when you go to the store and your 99-cent or $1.19 loaf of bread is now $3. Your $3 half gallon of milk is now $12. Your eggs are now $7 a dozen. This is when you're finally going to clue in about what we're talking about.
Well, and I think, with about 2 minutes here left to go, I think that really is the whole thing that we're talking about tonight. No matter how you can mitigate your survival, at this point it's imminent. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Things are coming. It's better off to be prepared. Do you want to risk not being ready?
Indeed. We talked about this a lot with Anita Bailey, and, it could be any number of things. And it's interesting that, there was a time when putting up food, let's say, was something that everybody did, and that was only 2 generations ago. And somehow now it's like you're a immoral person to put up food, or you're a weirdo or something. Yeah, you're a total weirdo, and there's something wrong with you. But it is really in your best interest to do it.
Yeah, and they call you a hoarder. Do you want to get your website out there really quick?
Sure. The Oppenheimer Ranch Project can be found at the easiest place to go is 3canyons.org, and that's 3 with a numeral. You can also go to oppenheimerranch.org, and Oppenheimer is spelled Oppenheimer. And you can also find us on YouTube at the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, and you can visit us on Facebook as well.
Awesome. And we are at the end of our time, unfortunately, so I just want to say my usual, which is dare to be different, dare to be you, dare to learn to love yourself unconditionally. Namaste, universe.
And from the land of 10,000 lakes and from the highest desert valley in the great American Southwest, good night, America.
Yo.
Yo, man.
Hey.
What's up?
Did they hang up?
They did.
Okay.
Yeah. I was trying to catch her before she did.
Right.
But that didn't work out. I think it went well.
Yeah. All right, well, call me.
I'll call you. All right.
All right, bye.